BYOB. My name is Nola Nash. This is
Laura Kemp, and this is
JT Ellison.
There we go.
JT. We are so glad to have you here. We got to chat for a little while on the awards night at Killer Nashville this summer, and that was really exciting. But now I am thrilled to have in my hand your new book, It's One of Us. And it has been, I'm scratching the surface, getting into it, but I'm reading in every nook and cranny over the last few days that I can possibly find. So it's come with me everywhere that I've gone for the last few days because I can't put it down. It's an amazing new book. It's yes.
Yeah, everybody asks when you're out and about.
Hearing it all over the place, and every waiting room I was in at Vanderbilt today, I had it with me. It's like reading. So lots of people got to see your book cover, and it is a fabulous one, and it is a fascinating book. JT, I'm going to let you tell the folks a little bit about who you are and a little bit about the book.
Okay. So I'm a thriller writer who lives in Nashville, Tennessee with my husband and my twin kittens. Don't be surprised if somebody decided, not the husband, but one of the cats might hop up to say hello. It'd be really awkward if my husband hopped on my desk to say hello. That would be good. Yeah, but the cats are right behind me. So most of my books take place in Nashville. It's One of Us is my 25th novel.
That's amazing.
And it is kind of a weird milestone, but it's the story of a young couple who are trying and failing to have children. And the morning the book opens, Olivia has just had yet another miscarriage, and she goes downstairs to tell Park and be comforted and tell him we've got to try again. And before she can, there's a knock on the door, and it's the police who want to speak with their son. The problem is obviously they don't have any children. And Park has not been entirely honest with Olivia about his past. And it really throws everything that she knows out the window. And they have to start over. Except for
it is really I love this premise. I love this premise. Yeah, Park doesn't have to start over. Park's done his duty there. I love the premise of this, and we won't get into too much what it is because I want people to discover that on their own, because that's part of the fun in these first few chapters is like, where are we going with this?
Yeah.
So I don't want to tell anybody. I want them to get there on their own. But the premise here is really fascinating. And as somebody who's, I watch a lot of British murder mysteries, give me Midsummer Murders on any given evening and I'm happy girl. But my mom wanted to be a forensic pathologist. And so this whole thing with DNA and where you go with this, I'm like, how does that not happen more than it does? I loved that. I really love that premise. But another thing that I love about it being in Nashville, just like you, is the setting. And being able to recognize the places that I'm reading about, like being at Vanderbilt this morning, reading about a nurse at Vanderbilt while I'm sitting there in the yellow walls of the Vanderbilt hallways. And you describe everything so perfectly. My brother is a Metro homicide detective. So whenever you talk about Metro, that's it's right there with me. And even in this one of our characters has a daughter at Harpeth Hall. So did I. There's just, I'm like, yeah, this is my book. I love that. And it's fun for me. And I can only imagine that your readers, especially after 25 books and so many of them being set in the city, they've gotten to know Nashville pretty well too, I would imagine. Is that something that they are excited to discover, kind of a new city and finding the things that are really here, that are real places?
I think so. It's interesting because I have been doing this. It feels like for so long, though it's only been, my first book came out in 2007. So it hasn't been that long, but really the earlier books are kind of a time capsule of the Nashville that we used to have. Mm-hmm. And so much of it is gone now. So many of the places that I write about are gone, and the settings have changed, and the personality of the city has changed. So it
really has.
We're growing and changing throughout all of these books as well, which is really, really fun.
I feel out of it. How has Nashville changed in the past few years?
Other than becoming the bachelorette capital of the bachelor party capital of the world, there's
a lot of people from Michigan go down there. That's where I'm from.
Well,
for
just the city
much
itself,
more than
though.
that, though. I mean,
Yeah, so much more.
we've grown so much. We've added so many cultural touchstones that we didn't have when I moved here. I mean, the Skemmerhorn didn't exist. The Predators were in their first year, the year we moved here. We were just getting a football team. We didn't have, you know, the Frisk was just opening. I mean, all of the things that, you know, are our cultural touchstones. We have the Bluebird's still here and the Ryman, but there's so much else. And, you know, all the restaurants that have changed over. And, you know, you can pretty much, if there's a church, it might have been a strip club. And if there's a strip club, it might have been a church. You know, it's changed.
You don't know.
But the whole personality of this city has changed over the past.
It has. And our skyline has changed so much too. I mean, for a while we were known as Crane City because we were building so many high rises all at once and all these cranes that kind of fill the downtown skyline. It really is. I love that you were talking about it being basically a dynamic character, because it is. It's stuck around for so long. I love using setting as a character anyway. And it really has changed so much that when you do kind of back up and read some books from years past, it is a different place than it was then. And so you do kind of get to rediscover it, I guess, in every book, which is kind of cool, because as you continue to read your stories, there's something new to learn about Nashville all the time. There really
I'm always tempted to, you know, I have the rights back to some of my books, and I'm always tempted to, like, oh God, I should update that because that's not what it was, you know, but I like that it's a time capsule. I think it's fun.
Yeah, it tells the story of the city as well as you go through. I was in Nashville in 1996. The last time I spent a significant time in Nashville.
You wouldn't recognize it now.
No, I mean, I visited Nola and Franklin, but we didn't spend any time in Nashville. So, yeah,
you know,
I can imagine.
A book you need to read, Laura, is It's Lie to Me, that's set
Franklin.
Set in Franklin. Yeah. Yeah, you need to read. I have a copy of it. When you come down and see me this summer, I'll send you back with a copy of Lie to Me.
No, she needs to go buy it. I gotta feed this cat.
Go buy your own copy.
I will happily do that. Are you from Nashville originally, JT? Is this where you were born and raised?
I'm not, but my husband is.
Oh,
my husband is a native. So he wanted to move home. We're living in outside of DC after we got married, and he wanted to come home, and so we did.
Yeah, there's a real homey feeling to that area, and even Nashville and Franklin just felt like I'd stepped right back into my hometown. I'm a Yankee, and I felt at home. So
we love you anyway.
Oh, I try.
We love you anyway. My son bought my mom a copy of Lie to Me at Landmark Booksellers in Franklin. So he bought it from a Franklin bookshop for my mother, who's in Franklin, and she devoured it. Absolutely loved Lie to Me. And for her too, part of it was that it was set somewhere that was very familiar to her, but she's our I tell her all the time, I said, your whole life is lattes and dead people. Like, this is just sort of your thing, isn't it? Because she's all about the murder mysteries and murder shows and all of that.
Sounds like podcast.
For somebody, lattes and dead people. So she appreciated the setting as well. But I know it's such a great place that even people who don't know the city, whether it's Franklin or whether it's Nashville, and, you know, with It's One of Us, they're getting to see, you know, those little glimpses of Nashville again, new Nashville as it is. You know, it's such a great setting, and you do such a great thing with it where you toss those things in that are familiar to those of us who live here, but you don't alienate your readers that don't know the city. And I think that's super important, because I have read books in the past where I feel like I'm an outsider looking in because I don't know the town that it's set, or if it's set in a real place and I've not been there. But I think there's so much homogenous about Nashville that it has enough familiarity to any town that anyone would go to that makes it a comfortable setting for a book that you've not been there. And yet you give us all of the seasoning that makes Nashville what it is, and those little places that we kind of recognize, like Fido's Coffee and things that we're just like, oh yeah, I've been there. But I love that you do that.
Right?
It is. It can be anybody's hometown. And I love books like that, because when you feel like you know the city through reading the book, you want to go there. You want to go experience those things. And so it's got to be good for getting people to come and visit us here in Nashville.
Not bad for tourism either.
Yeah, come visit. Don't stay.
Don't
move here.
Don't spend your big money.
That's it.
Oh my God, the housing market from people moving into this area has gotten a little nuts. But we love our visitors. Please come and
I say the
stay.
same thing in Michigan. Come visit, but please don't stay. So we like our wide open spaces.
Exactly. Same thing about Franklin. Franklin's changed a lot over the years too, probably since you wrote Lie to Me. I would imagine that Franklin it's such a different place since you wrote that one. I love that you can kind of look back and see those. As you've been touring around launching this book, and I've seen that you've done so many different places, so many different things. What has stood out to you? What has been kind of one of your favorite little moments of launching It's One of Us?
Oh, wow. I've literally been from Seattle to the Keys in the past several months, several weeks, several months. It's only been 5 weeks. It feels like years. It feels like years. It was really cool to actually be able to get back out on the road and just meet people, right? And it's funny. I don't know when I became the elder statesman, but suddenly I'm the elder statesman giving advice to the people around me and the authors. It's bizarre. It's just a bizarre. It's kind of hard to explain because I've always felt like the puppy. And suddenly I'm not the puppy anymore. And that was very evident out on the road. Everywhere that I went, somebody, just showed me that I had been doing this for a lot longer than I realized. I've been touching their lives for a lot longer. The topic of this one, obviously, it's my own story. And it's been incredibly meaningful and therapeutic to be able to talk to people about it and to have them say, my God, I've gone through this too. Thank you for bringing up something that I had no idea, you went through that. And thank you for using your platform to raise awareness, so that's been incredibly gratifying. Will Osley, though, let me give you a fun moment. Will Osley from the book, the detective Will Osley, the real person. And he moved us during the 2020 pandemic. His company moved us, and he came over to supervise when the guys were there. And we struck up a conversation and then eventually a friendship. And he said, I want to be a rock and roll detective cowboy.
And he is.
I want to be this great hero. And I'm like, well, I can do that for you. And so I wrote him into the book, and it was really cool. He came to the signing in Winter Park. And so, I was able to see him in person and sign him a book in person. I had sent him some signed books, but to do it in person and take a couple of pictures with the real detective.
How thrilling is that?
It was very cool.
Wow.
It's been a really gratifying tour.
That's good.
You're my second to the last event. I have one more event tonight, and then tour's done.
Oh. So is that a good thing? Is that are you ready to breathe?
I love all of you people, but it's really time for me to get back to work.
You got books to write.
So peopling is hard, and the touring travel is not exactly fun, right?
Because you're working, you don't get to experience it as
my goodness, no. You're getting up at 5 a.m, catching a car to the airport, flying to another state, getting to the hotel, changing clothes, going to the event, going to sleep, getting up the next morning, doing it again for weeks.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's exhausting. And I bet your little kitty cats missed you too.
My husband took great care of them now.
Well, that's good.
Are they really twins?
Yes.
Are they from the same litter?
Yes. We couldn't tell them apart for years. Yeah. Super cute.
Oh. Now, and you've managed not to injure yourself in a while.
Don't even
Seems like you
don't even bring that on me.
Lots of room for injury.
We're just going to be great.
I'm actually looking at my skinned knee. I fell down and skinned my knee, but other than that, no.
Of course you did. I mean, the last time I saw you, you were in a brace.
Yeah, it was crutches from the fall of the century. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, that was bad.
And Nola was telling me a little bit about that the injuries.
You've had some serious things go on with injuries. So
yeah,
part of it.
Bring that back into my world.
We're not manifesting any of that for you.
I'm going to spray sage at you here in a second.
As long as you don't break your fingers or your hands, and
We're
you can still write.
Yes, we're expressing gratitude for your continued good
Yeah.
health is what it is. We're not manifesting anything to befall you. We're
God, I hope
expressing
not.
gratitude.
Well, unbalanced right now.
That's funny.
So what have you got going on? I mean, now that you're settling back in, you're back home, you're in town, you're kind of finding your groove again. Have you got other projects that you're working on? Other things that just you
Yeah.
kind of breathe for a while?
No, I've got a bunch of other projects. I've got the next book that I'm working on, and doing copy edits on a Taylor book that's going to be out later this year. Doing the Jane Thorne, the next Jane Thorne book is out June 27th. Had a short story come out last week in the Infinity collection, and have two more short stories in the Jane series. So there's plenty.
Wow.
Plenty going on.
When do you sleep?
Yeah, when
And,
do
you know,
you-
just
when
kind
do
of
you
take your
sleep a lot.
downtime.
I think that's probably why I can function the way that I do. And I do deep work. I mean, you know, I really, I'm a big believer in deep work. And I shut off all the distractions and I just focus on what I'm doing. And
That's the key, isn't it? I have my dog pawing at the door right now, and this is where I write. That's not good.
yeah.
I have my own space where I can shut everything out.
Yeah, super important.
That's the key. Yeah.
I think that's why I leave. You know, I have a lovely office here, and I have just Dudley. I mean, I had to crate him because he will make himself known in a podcast if I don't. But I get so antsy in my own house, and I live alone. Like I don't have any real distractions here. But to do that deep work, I have to relocate, and I go
That's
sit at Onyx and
probably a good
Alabaster.
thing.
You know, I go to my coffee shop and I sit there. And even though there's still people moving around me, there's still, you know, activity. And you would think there's more activity there than there is at my house. For some reason, that's the spot. Like I can just tune in, and I know that that's why I'm there. And so that deep work happens there. And I think maybe it's finding that space. You know, different people have a different space.
I tried to do it at school and in a middle school, and it's not good.
No, I think that's the number one advice that I give people is find your time and find your space and respect it, and expect other people to respect it as well. And that way you can, you know, you just need a couple hours a day. You don't need 10 hours a day to get the work done, right? You just need a couple of uninterrupted hours of deep work, and you can make a lot of progress.
It's amazing when you don't have that uninterrupted time. I mean, if you say that, you know, 2 hours of uninterrupted time, you can get so much done. And people say, oh, well, I write for 5 hours a day. Really? How much of that time are you actually writing? How much are you checking emails? How much are you doing other things? How much are, you know,
social media?
If you really had that compacted work time, that's really where the good things happen. And then you have your time and space to step away. And that's where your brain kind of can refresh a little bit. Your body can refresh a little bit. You're not kind of cramped in that same place. And that's where creativity happens too, is allowing your thoughts to wander away from the work. And if you're always in the work in some capacity, just kind of scattered throughout your day like that, I think we kind of limit our brains from exploring and those new ideas and those new things that come to us. So I think that's great advice. Laura's heading out to Taekwondo.
Hi, Laura. Good to see you.
Me too. You ladies have a wonderful time chatting, and I'm sure we'll catch up again.
Hi, Laura.
Bye.
Laura's headed off to Taekwondo with her. She can't leave. We're holding her captive. I'm sorry. There is no leave studio button. There it is. Oh, she's going with her kiddo to Taekwondo, but Laura actually she's pretty badass herself over there on the mat.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Talk about turning your brain off and your creativity and letting your brain do other things. She gives it lots of exercise there. So I think that you've got some great advice for people with that deep work. Do you find those questions come up a lot from people where when you're doing events and you're touring?
Well, sure.
Is that something that folks ask you about all the time?
Yeah. When do you sleep?
Yeah.
From 10 until 8 at least. You know, I like to sleep. I'm not a morning person. I'm not the lark that gets up at 5 a.m. and writes in the, you know, no, that's just not me. You know, I have a normal schedule, normal life. I shut down in the evenings. I work out, I make dinner, I hang out with my husband, you know, I read a book. I'm not I kill myself in some ways, but I'm also just really contained to a certain amount of time. And I hire people to help me do the things that are not a good use of my time.
Yeah. Do you think that that helps as far as, I mean, being prolific? That's 25 books that are already published. Having that kind of balance in your life do you kind of feel that that's important in order to be that prolific?
It is. I mean, I spent the first several years of my career not organized with any of this. It was just writing with my hair on fire, doing too many things. I still do too many things, but I'm a little bit more disciplined about how I do them and when I do them. You know, I try not to do business unless it's Friday. Fridays are for business, right? For writing essays and messing with, you know, newsletter stuff and social media. If I'm on social media, you know, that kind of stuff. And the rest of the time I'm trying very hard to do one thing at a time. But the first few years that I was doing this, I was just really going with my hair on fire, and I wasn't very productive.
I feel that. I feel like I've been doing a lot of that too. And I've gotten to that point where I feel like I have to start actually really defining my time, because I've been writing with my hair on fire. I love that phrase. That's an excellent phrase. Thank you, JT, for that one, because that's exactly how I feel.
It's good and it's bad. I mean, you know, on the surface, it looked like I was doing a ton, but when I actually counted up the words for the year, I hadn't done very much. So this has been, you know, since 2009, I started doing annual reviews to really deep dive into how much work I was actually getting done and what I was really accomplishing with that time. And that changed how I approach everything. And, you know, so again, find your time and stick with it, and you can get a lot done.
Yeah. And I feel like, you know, this year has been a bit of a struggle for me just in the first 3 months, because I've been so scattered. I've been doing so many things. I spent, you know, 3 weekends in March out of town, traveling different places. And I kind of felt the same way. It was like, oh my God, where am I? Where do I live? I don't know what I'm doing anymore. But and with a full-time job and family, you know, all of these things, I think the intentionality, you know, hearing you reiterate that intentionality is something that I needed to hear. And hopefully that helps some other authors and people who are just kind of feeling like they're taking on more than they should, more than they can. And it's some of it comes down to saying no to things. And I'm real bad about that. I'm oh God. I
don't
feel
like saying
horrible
no.
saying
I like
no.
saying yes.
Yeah. It
You
feels
know,
much better to say yes until you realize you're drowning in things you said yes to.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you keep that from happening to you? I know people have got to be asking you to read and review and blurb for them and come to this event and do this thing. And, you know, how do you prioritize what you need to do over the things that you want to say yes to? Even, you know, those things, it's really hard to say no to the things you want to say yes to.
Yeah. I have like a rule of 5. Once I have 5 things on my plate, the answer is no, until the 5 things are off my plate.
That's
right. And
very
so
good
like
practice.
this yesterday, even though it wasn't Friday, I had to sit down with my email and I had to go through. It's like, okay, I've got these books that I need to blurb, and I've got to respond about these events and you know, all of that. And I set everything up and I said yes to the things that, you know, are a hell yeah. You know, I've gotten to the point where if it's kind of like,
You're gonna rank it.
to do that, but you know, if I have any hesitation at all, I have to say no, because you know, my instincts are really solid. Either, you know, it's going to be too much physical time to get there. I've been having long COVID issues, so I've been very, very stringent about what I say yes and no to, because I just don't have the physical stamina to do everything that, I mean, you know, even with tour, I was having to say, hey, we've got to decline. I can't say yes to this because I'm not going to have the energy to do all of this. And so I'm really trying to be cognizant of how much physical energy I have to do things, as well as, you know, okay, reading is not exactly taxing, but it gets to be soul sucking when you're reading things that you wouldn't necessarily have picked up at that moment. It's not that you wouldn't have read it. It's just because I would never, ever blurb a book that I would never pick up.
Yeah.
Right. I have just got rules about that. It's like, if it's not in my genre, if it's not something I enjoy, if it, I just won't do it. It's not worth it to try to do that. So I only blurb stuff that I actually like.
Yeah.
That helps. But I still have to say no so much to that because I get overloaded and then I can't work on my own stuff. And, when if it's more than 5 things at a time, then outside of my own personal stuff, that's when I start feeling really, really anxious and I get, I kind of shut down and then I can't do anything. And that's not good for
That's
anyone.
no, that's not
Like
good for
the
anyone.
rest of my year is now scheduled. It's March. It's the end of March. I know exactly what I'm doing for the rest of the year. And anything else that comes in, it has to be a no because I've already got everything so lined up. And that's, I think there's a little bit of freedom in being able to say, I'm sorry, I've already booked for the year. I've already booked up for the year. And we have to help each other and a rising tide lifts all boats. And I am huge about doing that. And so when I can't help somebody, I'll give them a social media shout out. Cause I think honestly that sometimes does more. And if I just can't do that, then, I just can't. And I'm sorry. And I, it doesn't mean that I don't love you and support you, but sometimes I can't do everything. And I have to keep telling myself that.
I saw speaking of social media, it's a social media post by Carly Waters, who's a literary agent. And I love her posts are just so real about things. And she posted something about, people asking her about, does she have kind of a maybe pile? And she said she's finally gotten to the point where if it's a maybe, it's a no. And it kind of reminded me of your hell yes. Like it needs to be a hell yes, because that's what we have time and energy for. And you just get so overwhelmed with the maybes or the I kind of want to, or that might be fun, that you don't have the time to really be present in the things that you do find the most joy in, the hell yeses, that you want to be part of. And it's so hard to say no, but that it resonated with me, if it's a maybe, it's a no.
Yeah.
And kind of taking that out of, obviously I'm not a literary agent. That's not the perspective, the context, I guess is a better word, that I would use that word of advice. But kind of like you, I do get asked to do a lot of things and, not to the extent that you do by any means. But, now I might kind of combine those two things to, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no.
Yeah. No,
and just kind of leave it at that.
It's really important to if it's the weird situation in which the better you are at what you do, right? Your core ability, which for me is writing. So the better you are at what you do, that is the thing that people want you to do the least of, right? The better you are, the more they want you to judge this contest, blurb this book, come to this conference, go to this fundraiser, go to this book club, talk here, talk there, fly here, fly there. And none of that is in support of actual writing. And without the writing, the whole house of cards collapses.
And they will ask you at all of those things. So when is your next book coming out? You're like, I'd
right.
love to write one.
Not until I get home, not until, and that's the other thing of just making sure you're doing one thing at a time. Right.
Yeah.
Because I've got 6 projects that I'm doing right now, but I'm not touching all 6 of them in a day the way I would beforehand. Right now I have until the end of April to wrap 4 of these projects, and they all are under one umbrella, right? So wrap everything under that umbrella and it's done. And then it's all turned off and I move on to the next project. And that is, that's just kind of how I have to segment things. And that works for me. You just have to find what works for you.
Yeah. And hopefully some of these wonderful ideas that you've given, and these are practical things. I think it comes down to discipline to do that too. And I'm guilty of knowing what I should be doing and then just not doing it because I lack the discipline. I say yes too much. I feel obligated to things that it's very hard for me, especially family, and knowing that I want to spend time with my family and do things. And like I spent the weekend watching my nephew play ball, and it was a beautiful weekend here in Middle Tennessee. It was gorgeous. Normally, a few hours of that day would have been in front of my computer working on a manuscript, but it wasn't. I was at the ball field all day long, and it's where I wanted to be, but also I didn't need to be there all day. I didn't need to watch 4 baseball games. I really only needed to watch 2 and then go back and do what I needed to do. But it was really hard to say no, and I wanted to see him play in the championship game. It says I have to prioritize, but that also means that was time I did not spend doing what I needed to do that now I have to carve out some more time for. So I think it's the discipline, and it's knowing your hell yeses versus your maybes. It's a no. I appreciate everything that you have shared with us today. I appreciate your time, your flexibility. I know we didn't get off to a great start. Y'all don't know this, but it took like 3 tries to get this going. And as usual, it was probably definitely me. It's, y'all know this by watching this show enough that if it's going to go sideways, it's going to be me that sends it there. And it's definitely me. I take full responsibility for that. And I appreciate both your grace and your flexibility and your time, because I know you don't have very much of that. It has been truly a joy talking to you. And I'm really glad that Laura got the opportunity to talk with you for a little bit too, because she was really looking forward to meeting you, and she's looking forward to reading It's One of Us as well. I'm looking forward to devouring this everywhere that I go. It will be accompanying me until I finish it, because I am in love with It's One of Us, JT Ellison's newest book. And y'all go out and get your copy of that one, because it is fantastic. It will hook you. You will not be able to put this one down. And congratulations on this new project. And thank you so much for taking the time. Hang out with me for just a second so we can make sure all of our audio downloads. But this has been a copy. I've lost it. Words went out of my head. This has been a copywritten podcast of Authors on the Air Global Radio Network. Thank you so much for joining us for BYOB, and we look forward to having you join us next time.